So the Fens is a beautiful and fascinating place. You've really just got to come and have a look. It's got some of the most epic sunsets in the entire world. I like to think of it as England's big sky country. It's got great people, great history, great nature. Take Wisbech. It's a beautiful Georgian market town and inland port. If you walk around, you'll see some of the most stunning Georgian architecture in the country. And yet what you also get, in a fascinating way, are high streets and marketplaces where so many shops are closed. Footfall has really declined, and it's very hard, you'll find, to get there. Now, if you want to know what time it is, you'll struggle, because most of the clocks there have stopped working. And there's a really strange sense there that you've got something so beautiful and so interesting, so historically significant, where there's been little effort from people in charge to really care about it. Or take Boston. Boston has got a bit of a bad reputation, had a high Brexit vote. And that's in large respect because many people felt like they weren't being listened to by politicians. So you've had your opportunistic journalists come and get their xenophobic vox pops in the marketplace, but you've always got to look deeper. Boston, again, a place with amazing history stretching back to the medieval times. One of the most cosmopolitan parts of the country, brilliant marketplace. And it's a place where, again, you've just got to look around. You've got beautiful nature, you've got mills, you've got history, you've got fantastic Portuguese restaurants, you've got great things happening everywhere. But again, it's that lack of investment and that sense that people feel like their places aren't cared for. At least in Boston, they've got a new council led by independents who are doing good work. But the funding and power needs to come from a national level. Finally, take Peterborough. Peterborough, another brilliant modern city. In a way, if you want to understand the future of the UK, you need to understand Peterborough. On one hand, you've got the old ancient history, the cathedral, you've got Cathedral Square. You've then got the new town and all the social progress that was attempted in the late 20th century. And then nowadays, you've got people from all nationalities coming and living side by side. Not always easy, but Peterborough is a place to learn from. Its reputation is as the worst place in England, which is an absolute joke. And I think that reflects a kind of patronising attitude, not just to Peterborough, but to the wider Fens, that people don't come and visit unless they're coming for a negative news story. Now, if you go around Peterborough, you'll see amazing murals, you'll see community gardens that are struggling to stay open. You'll see artists, filmmakers doing fantastic work. And you've got Fairy Meadows, or Fairy Meadows as they call it here. And it's a beautiful place to bring up your family. That's what I've learned spending a lot of time here. But again, with Peterborough, it's the same thing. They're closing down libraries. They've kicked out the artists out of their space so they can put failing children's services there. What's going on? Peterborough, again, a place with amazing potential, let down by bad politics.
This is the managed decline of the country as well as the local area. You know, more austerity, less money for any services, yet higher council tax. It begs the question, what are we paying for? And if we're paying more money and we're getting less services, then surely the system is broken at this point. We now are in a situation where we have to have both parents working if you've got both parents at home. Kids have to be in after school club. We haven't got money for libraries. We haven't got money for swimming pools. So surely the problem isn't to peddle the same system. Where's the alternative coming from? At what point do we get angry and say this needs to actually stop because we're getting nothing? I mean, what's going to happen in the next generation? I feel for my kids. What are we paying council tax for in 2045? What will we have left then? I mean, our local council were boasting about the fact that they still empty the bins and fill the potholes. And that's your bare minimum. That's your legal requirement.
I think it boils down to a lack of opportunity. I think that's where most everything else stems. The educational system here is pretty poor. Like, you know, there's just one school basically, and it's understaffed and underfunded, and there's not enough provisions for people with special educational needs or like people with behavioral issues, anything like that. And then that boils over into lack of jobs. Well, like there are jobs, but they're not very fulfilling jobs. It's mostly factory work, which is very difficult. both physically and mentally. Like, it really kind of brings you down as a person. So then, you know, people are working these like night shifts or like, you know, 12-hour shifts, you know, they're always on their feet. They don't have the energy to then try to do anything more, or like try to like find something more fulfilling in life. And so then that boils over into the fact that there's no kind of, well, I say no creative space, there's a lack of creative spaces. And then on top of that, it's so poorly connected transport-wise that it's also very difficult to get out and have some kind of interchange with places nearby, unless you have a car, which is then, you know, carries a huge financial penalty.
I think one of the problems around here, or the main problem around here, is probably like the rest of the country. It's that the community, it's very hard to be heard by those who have the power.
What the Fens does not lack for is brilliant communities, great history, nature, food production. It's got so many strengths, so many assets. But in a sense, part of the problem is that decision makers and politicians rarely come and visit this area. And you'll see it whenever you come to somewhere like Wisbech or Boston or even Peterborough. The state of the roads, the state of public transport, the state of healthcare, of housing. There's been decades of underinvestment in this area. And you know what it creates? It makes people feel insecure in their lives. They feel like their communities have been given up on, and they start to give up on their communities too. And it's entirely politically preventable.
We've created a system which is wrecking everything. We're taking a wrecking ball to the planet, but we're taking a wrecking ball to the planet because, you know, we still have this overarching belief, almost down to the individual, that unfairness, inequality and elitism is somehow something to be proud of, something to promote, even though those three principles, unfairness, inequality and elitism, when looked at globally, are destroying the planet, destroying the lives of ordinary working people, destroying our young people's mental health, you know, creating competition where competition shouldn't really be, you know, replacing collaboration with competition, cooperation with competition. You know, it's a system that needs to change.
None of the parties seem to know what they're doing these days, really. I don't think. I know we've had COVID and all sorts of things like that, and Brexit, and it's just complicated a lot of things, but I just find it very depressing, politics and international politics at the minute. And it's very easy to sort of stay in your own little corner of the country and just get on with your own life and hope it all improves. But
there isn't a message from any political party that says this is what we could create, this is how we could do it, and it doesn't bolster the general public. It doesn't believe in the general public. It doesn't fulfill us. It doesn't say to us, do you know what, we can do this together. And if you have hope, like we do, we can work together to make a better society. The message that we've had for the last 20 odd years from top down is this is what you deserve and be thankful for it. Not where do we go next? What's the thing that we could create? Dare we dream big? And if we do dream big, what does that look like? We might not get there, but let's head towards that journey instead of there is no money, you deserve nothing more than cuts to your public services, and you should be thankful for that. We're managing this the best we possibly can, but it's a disaster. And that is the constant message. It's a disaster.
And if we're a poor community, what it lacks is money. That's kind of what makes you poor. And if you don't actually put that money into the community, then they carry on being poor. So I think that is a thing that I think that it doesn't seem to be understood by those who come here, whether that's arts groups, politicians or whatever. Nobody's actually investing properly. And of course, poor people tend to be, it's that whole deserving, undeserving poor thing. If you're poor, you've made a choice. It must be your choice. You must have got there in some way or another. So it's pat on the head. I'm not going to give you any money because obviously you're not very good with money because you're poor, but I'm going to help you out by letting you volunteer with me. I'm going to help you out by allowing you to tell me your lived experience.
So if you don't know anything about the Fens, You might have heard about the high Brexit vote. You might know that some of the lowest voter turnout in the UK is in this area, and you might therefore conclude that people here are not interested in politics, there's nothing to work with, and we might as well give up on the place. Well, if you're concluding that, you're wrong. There's an amazing history of popular organising and radical resistance. I'll tell you about one example. It's the Fen Tigers. Now, they were a semi-mythical group of local people that lived off the land here in the 17th century. Now, come to the Fens today, it's massive fields, logistics warehouses, farms, not many trees. You'd have come in the 17th century, it was marshes, wetland. It was one of the most beautiful and peculiar marshland landscapes in the country, probably in Europe, if not the world. Now, people came along and they wanted to make money out of that. They decided that they would just kick the people there off the land and turn it into food production. Local people here resisted. They called themselves the Fen Tigers. They dressed in costumes. They attacked the drainage machinery. And for a long time, they forced it out. In the 19th century, this image of the Fen Tigers remained. People back then were struggling with some of the things we're struggling with today. They couldn't afford to put food on the table. Their wages were going down. And a lot of the people who were doing skilled work were losing out to automation. And you know what they did? They took up the image of the Fen Tigers and they started attacking, protesting, challenging the wealthy people that were taking power from the area. And to an extent, they were successful. England's history isn't just one of the defeat of the working class of this country. Look at the Fens.
If a group like the Fen Tigers existed today, it would have to be an all-encompassing protest, as in it would need to break the levers and the gears of the machine itself as a whole, because it's become this monolithic structure that needs dismantling from the roots. It's not just people coming in to take the land and privatize it. This is all encompassing. It controls every aspect of your life now. You know, we are essentially caged animals. We're captive, willingly captive. I get that sounds extreme, but the few freedoms that we have are hard won. And having capital to spend shouldn't be the human spirit of us being able to consume something or afford a holiday. Don't get me wrong, I like a holiday, but that shouldn't be my freedom once a year of being let out of the cage. And we're conditioned into being thankful for the crumbs that are spat out.
We almost have a moral obligation to make sure that the government are doing what is right for the people. And this touches on a subject as well about the food production and these green spaces, is who owns the land and why isn't it part of the community?
When you ignore people, when you pretend that their voices don't matter, maybe except at election time, when you take for granted that people are allowed to live in disinvested communities and have bad lives, don't assume that there's no consequences. The history of English democracy is a history of protest and uprising, and a lot of it has come out of this area. I would say with this image of the Fen Tigers and many other workers' risings in this area, there's something politically potent here. It doesn't just drift to democracy. We see that with an interest in the far right. But support for the far right comes from one key source. People feel insecure in their lives and they feel uncared for by the state. That is a consequence of political choices made in Westminster, and it's something that could and should change. When I ask people what they think of the Fens and where they live, answers fall into two categories. The first is, it's a great place, but a shame about the state it's fallen into now. And the second is, it's a great place, it's a shame about the state it's fallen into now, but now I'm going to try and do something about it. I'm going to grow a garden, I'm going to paint the streets, I'm going to try and do something in my local area, set up a soup kitchen, set up a small charity, try and connect with my communities. The thing is, whether it's hopelessness or a degree of hope, the energy, the ideas, the expertise, What we need is already here. We don't need to parachute somebody in to come and sort it all out. You need to give power to people here. That's what I've learned.
There are things in the community that can be done by the community that politicians, and I mean this at all levels, don't need to be involved with. They don't have to be involved with. But they are the ones with the power. They are the ones with the money. The way that councils can raise money is brilliant. It's great because it's only a penny a week per person. So £1 a year, that's another £30,000 a year. If you give me £30,000 to run projects, I'd do way more than what's happening. So councils need to do certain things and they can do other things and they either do or they don't. But communities could do all these really cool things, but they don't get given the money. And here, locally, because of the opinion of people towards the town, towards the Fens, towards the people that are here, they think they need to come and do the thing. And they don't think anyone here has the abilities.
Like, it's not impossible that things will get better. It's just going to be a lot of effort to get there. Universal basic income, that would be great. I feel like that would really change things. And I think we have the money for it. Also, you know, taxing the wealthy would be great. That would certainly help a lot. Putting proper tax on corporations and, the 1% would certainly help us get there. But yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to trying to get a bit more economic equality, because once people have that like basic level of their needs met, then there will be more energy to continue improving things in a more general philosophical sense.
Community is kind of the key, and it has been for probably as long as man has existed. And we can do far more in groups than we can individually. And I think we've kind of come to this point where we almost allow government to take the role and just do what they want to do or what they feel is right to do. We're all in this same boat. Some people say it politically, we're not in the same boat at all. Some are in dinghies, some are in yachts. We're all in the same planet, let's put it that way. I think there's enough divides between everyone, so I think the councils and the people need to be coming together to work out solutions. I think it's pretty clear that most of these systems are broken or they're fixed.
You've got to politically empower ordinary people. But ordinary people are not politically empowered. Ordinary people are becoming disillusioned with politicians. They see the grandstanding, the gaslighting, they see the self-aggrandising that goes on. Politicians pop up, talk about themselves, talk about what they're going to do, but then deliver absolutely nothing. You've got the sort of the global agenda, which is being pushed at the moment, which is in a sense taking people's minds off what's actually happening at home, what's really going on within their economy, within our economy. What we need to do is politically empower people. We need to stop our democracy being no more than a safety valve and actually get it representing the interests of ordinary working people. Ordinary working people's interests are very modest. You know, I'm an ordinary person. I have very modest expectations. You know, we could all have a much more comfortable life, a much less stressed life, a much more collaborative existence if we just were able to have our voices heard, you know, further up the political hierarchy than just the local council. There's no real radicalism being exposed to the top end of the political system. The radicalism's down here, but the mechanisms for us getting our radicalism up there don't exist. So the notion of revolution doesn't have to be anything violent. It just needs to be something radical that actually recognises that the people down here are the victims of everything that's going on up there, and we have a right to be heard, and we have a right to get our voices up there so people know what the consequences of national policies might be on towns like Boston or towns like anywhere else in Britain.
Right, I'm not a fortune teller, but if you were to ask me what do I think is going to happen for this area over the next few years, well, let's just be blunt. The status quo here is managed decline. a continued failure to invest in what people need and give them power and give them security, it's going to mean that you're going to get more polarised politics, you're going to get more people leaving the area, and ultimately you're going to see people's quality of life reduced. You might get the odd journalist coming along, gets the train up, maybe drives to Wisbech, because there's no train station, finds somebody outside a shop, gets them to say something racist, quotes it, and then uses that as confirmation that we should rightly give up on this place. That's what I think is probably going to happen. And what I'm calling for is something quite different. And it ain't going to cost the world. The first is, to deal with the challenges of the Fens, you don't need to parachute in somebody from London or Cambridge. The expertise, the ideas, the passions, the energies for renewal are already here in communities. So set up a new form of local democracy to sit alongside local government, community democracy. It'd be local assemblies where communities come and organise themselves, and they're involved as equal partners with local authorities in the decisions that are made in their area. The second takeaway is having a minimum infrastructure spend across the country, but it would really benefit here. And what we're talking about here is for every person in the country, a minimum amount of spending so that they can get access to the infrastructure they need to live a good quality of life. The last one is to recognise that the Fens needs to get put back on the map. You look on a map, you won't see it anywhere. What I'm calling for, and what many people are calling for, is to make the Fens a new kind of regional authority. Bring together places and towns that are totally disserved by the current county and devolved arrangements, and celebrate that heritage, that history, that nature, that beauty, all the amazing food that is produced there, and all the amazing people. This is what you need to do to create Fen power.